Hey everybody, it's Andrew Brown from the AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp bringing you another video, and this time we are going to work on the UI. So when I created the design or the implementation of the UI for Crutter, I did it on my Mac laptop, which has a Retina display, and it looked great there, but what I've been finding as we've been doing this bootcamp, I've been working on my Windows machine, and it's really hard to see what is going on, and it just has to do with the difference of how Windows or different monitors work. And so I really do think that I need to change the contrast and make it easier for us to see what's going on. And so that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to look for the last branch I worked on, and I'm pretty sure it is week week 4, week 3. So again, you do not branch, only I branch. It's just so that we can find stuff later on. So I'm going to make a new branch here. I'm going to drop down and type in week 3 again. And we'll say week 3 improved UI. So I'm hoping we will improve the contrast of the UI so it's nicer on these monitors. How necessary is this for learning cloud? Not so much, but if you can make things look good, it's just an additional skill. And I figured I'd add the video. And you can either copy and paste the code that I produce after this or follow through, and you can learn a new skill if you aren't strong at front-end stuff. My original background is front-end design. I have really good design skills when I want to use them. You can definitely tell by the main website, right? But it can be tedious. So if you don't have the patience, and you don't like doing it for other people, then that's a different story there. But I only like doing designs when I'm working on my own projects. I don't do it for work anymore. But anyway, what we'll do here is open up Gitpod. And I'm just going to tweak the design on this computer, the Windows computer, until it looks something better. Now, of course, you could do a lot more stuff. You could look at contrast rules. There's whole systems of how to implement good UI design, but I'm just going to eyeball it here and say good enough so that we can then proceed to make this just easier for us to use week after week. What's really interesting is that when you look at other alternatives to Twitter, like when we look at the Fediverse, here, and we say things like social apps. I'm just trying to find a list of them. We'll go back here. I know they have their own wiki. Maybe it's here. Not exactly, but there are different versions of it. Is it over here? I'm just trying to find maybe directory, projects. So if you go to microblogging, there are different platforms out there. So what we're building is not just a replacement of Twitter. Mastodon exists. Pleroma exists. Terrible name. So hard to name. So we have Misskey, other ones like this. New Social is really old. But what's interesting with these ones is, like, if you look at Misskey, and Misskey has an offshoot that's called something, but this looks like Twitter. But it allows you to do custom templates. So if you want it to have a different look, you can do that. Pleroma has different front ends. So the back end and front end are decoupled. And so you can have the back end and then have different front ends that have different levels of customization, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, I was just talking here as the environment was launching up. And so now we are over here. So what I'm going to do is just start up our application, and hopefully it just works. And so we'll have to wait for Docker to appear. So I'll give it a moment. Let me just pause, and I'll come back here when Docker is here. All right, so Docker has appeared on the left-hand side. So if we click there, well, not there, obviously, but we need to right-click and go Docker Compose Up, as we do week after week. And I'm going to just drag this out here, and we will start up the application. While that's going, I'm going to just drag this down here and open up the front-end React.js application and go to source. So our CSS is kind of a little bit all over the place. How you want to organize it depends on what you like to do. In React applications, I noticed that they like to either have it beside the component. So I could have made a folder for each component and said, or each page, and said confirmation, and then page CSS, page JS. Sometimes the CSS is directly embedded in the top here, so there's a syntax to have a single file. Sometimes all these CSS files are in a CSS directory, and then all the JS files are in a JS directory. It just depends on how your team wants to work with those files. There are benefits and trade-offs for both of those ways. And so we're just doing it a different way. I've done it every single way, and I just kind of get used to one way for a project, and I just stick with it because, you know, there's no point in picking a preference. It just matters what your team is comfortable with. So we'll go over here and just see if it started up. It's still going. I guess it's pulling those images. So we will wait a little bit for those images to pull up because we need to see something visual in order to make changes. Great, so I think it's running now. So I'm going to go over to ports and we're going to open up our front end and see if our application is in some working shape. And we'll give it a moment to think. Shouldn't take too long here. No errors, at least I don't think there's any errors. We'll wait a little bit here. There we go. I did have to wait quite a bit there, but sometimes it's super fast, sometimes it's a bit slower. And so on my screen, this is so hard to read. And yes, of course, it might be smaller based on what your resolution is, but just the contrast here, I can't really make out anything. And it definitely does not look like that on my screen. So I know some boot campers who have back-end or front-end skills already started tweaking it. I think they did a great job. I'm going to have to do something similar here as well. So first thing is that this background, the distinction between this area and that area is very hard. So that's probably the first thing I want to tackle. Now, if we right click and we go to inspect, sometimes it tells us where the CSS is. So if you go here and you can see we're hovering over elements. And I like to try to really keep as few elements so that when I'm styling, it's a lot easier. And I like to uniquely name my classes so that, again, it's very easy to identify where stuff is. There are different CSS frameworks out there like Tailwind. Tailwind is okay. My issue with Tailwind is that, it makes it very easy to rapidly build things because you are filling in, I'll just show you here. You're filling in these options, and so you can rapidly build out your stuff. But when you are trying to debug things and tweak things, I think it might be better to use these class names. So there's a mix of utility classes and stuff like that you can do. But anyway, what I'll do is I'm looking for my background. And so if I go here, we can see that left-hand side, like what the styling is. And we have a background of black, or it's not exactly black. It's 14:3:28. It's good design not to use like black, like 000. You should use an offset of a color so that when you want to use black, you can use it. But anyway, we'll just click here and this won't change anything. It's just like, it won't change anything permanently, but we can go and play around and see some other stuff. So I'm just dragging around here and we're taking a look. I'm just gonna drag it up there. And already I think that that is a lot easier to look at just by dragging that around. So you can see how easy an improvement that makes it. Now, in terms of what color we should use is another question. We do have some colors picked out, like this purple here. I'm just trying to decide here because now that we've done this, you can see that this is a bit harder to read. So really depends on where we want to meet it. Do we want it to be high contrast? But then we have this issue up here where these are not very readable. It looks kind of cartoony to me. So we can just play around and figure out where it is we want it to be. So I can put it here, right? So what I can do here is just click off. And so now that is the color that we have. Now the question is, where is this code? So sometimes what it'll do is it'll show you where the file is. So it's saying it's in index.css. Sometimes these files are compiled down, so it's not always clear what the source file is. Or it could be that sometimes you click into it and it might say the comment where it is. But we can see that the code is being applied over here in this index.css. So let's see if that actually matches up to where we think the code is supposed to be. Going over back to our tab here on the left-hand side, I'm looking for index.css, which is over here. And there it is. So it looks like so far it's very easy to find where that stuff is. If I go back over here for a moment, whoops. If Go back to the elements. This is the value we set. Now, if we click here, you can actually toggle through these and change how you want to represent the color. At least I know we could bring in the hex. We could also bring in the RGBA. It depends on what you like to do. I generally stick with RGB because then I can change the values and it's more easy for me to make sense of red, green, blue to adjust those. And sometimes it's nice to have RGBA if you want to adjust the transparency. That is another thing you can do. You can also bring in the hex code. It's up to you. But I'm going to do RGBA today, even though it's a little bit more work. I think that's totally fine. If there's a way to copy out of here, oh, right here, copy to clipboard. But I don't know what that's going to give us, if that's going to give us the hex or something else. So we'll go here and we'll paste it in. We'll say allow, and it gave us the RGB. Notice the commas are missing, so you'll have to put those in. It's not a perfect copy paste, but it's pretty good. And my keyboard's just being a bit silly here, so we'll do that. I'm going to double check I didn't delete out a character because it was kind of acting funny. Did we already change it and lose it? Well, let's just hope that's the right one. So I'll just go back over here. And it's nice when it previews the color here. You can even click here and move it around as well. Not all editors do that, but the editors we are using seem to be doing that. And we will save that. And we will go back and refresh and see if those colors persist. And they do. So I think that, at least from a contrast perspective, this is easier to see. But, you know, I kind of liked having it all kind of a subtle thing, but when it was dark, that just did not work. Another thing I'm noticing is the in-between lines here are not showing up very well, so that is something else we'll want to improve. So I'll go back to our inspector here, wherever it went. Here it is. Okay, and we will just scroll on, shrink this down here. I'm going to select the first one here, and I'm going to hover over. I'm looking for that line, so I'm just trying to get a general element. And then what I do, so I go here, and I just try to find it. So you got to play around with this stuff and kind of make these windows fit to the size you need them to fit in. Like here, I don't have enough room, so I'm just going to shrink that. Okay, so I can kind of see this element a bit better. Bring that over here. And again, we'll go back and inspect it, because I think that the element is going to be on here, and it is. So on the right-hand side, I see border bottom. Sometimes you have to explore and click around and find it, but the markdown for our stuff is extremely clean, so it's not too hard to figure out where this stuff is. So for the border bottom, I can just click into it again, and you can see it is dark, so I can bring it up. You'll notice it is actually kind of a bluish color, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, you just got to kind of pick it up and figure out where you want it to be. Again, we're not doing color theory. There's a lot of work that can be done when doing color theory, which would make everything aesthetically nice. But I guess that's for the front-end developer bootcamp. And I could do that, but I don't know if anybody wants a front-end developer bootcamp. We could also match the color that we did over here, but I'm just going to drag something out until I'm happy with it. That's not super high contrast. Something that's a bit more muted. And I think that's better. So I'll go here and we'll copy that. Okay. And where is this code? So we go up here and it says activity item CSS. We'll click through. It says .activity item. So seems pretty straightforward. Again, I know these are components, so it's not too hard for me to find these. So we will go over here, and on the left-hand side, we'll drop down components and go into activity item .css. And there it is. We'll go ahead and paste that in. We'll put the commas in. I'm pretty sure it won't work without the commas. I've been doing it for 15 years, so if I stop doing it, I just assume it's going to break. So there we go. Those are a lot more clear. So you can just kind of see like how you can tweak it. Like up here, I feel like the contrast around this is not enough. These are starting to become hard to read because we changed that. And so it's just this big game of tweaking things around. Now, something that might make things easier, and notice this is actually using, what color is this using? Sometimes like when you have multiple CSS colors applied, it's not very clear what's being taken effect. So here it's showing this for the hover, because I think when we selected that we were hovering. Yeah, now it's not showing the hover. So if I go down here, at the time when we did that, it was hovering, so it was showing that. But if we were hovering, we could turn this on here and turn on hover, and we could see what it looks like when it's hovered, and also what its effect is. I can turn that off. Okay, so you have an idea what it would be if it was active, focus. These are additional CSS properties, but we were only doing hover. So, you can change it for that. But notice this one is using the RGBA value, so I could just go here and adjust this, and we could just click into it again. I could just adjust it here. So it's a bit brighter, and we can do 0.5. It's nice to round it off there. And I can go and find this is in the desktop sidebar. So we'll go ahead and do that. Sometimes it does this /50%. I'm actually really curious. No, you can't do it with the commas. I just know that it doesn't work. I keep thinking that it might work. At least not in plain CSS, it doesn't. And where did they say this element was? Desktop sidebar, CSS. So we'll go over there and click into the desktop sidebar CSS. And there it is. So instead of 0.2, I can do 0.5, and we'll go back and refresh. There we go. Now let's say we have these values everywhere, and we don't want to continually update a bunch of different values. What we can do is actually set up CSS variables. I use this in apps, but I always forget how to do it. It's like --var. So I'm gonna go over to ChatGPT and just get a reminder on how to do it. So I'll just go ahead and log in here. I'm just gonna ask it, how do I do it? How do I set variables for theming CSS? It'll tell me. It's like --var. I don't want Sass. It's just a built-in thing. Okay, so that's not helping me. So say, show an example of using --var for CSS. Okay, great. So the idea is that we can define in our root colors, and then we can call them later on. And so this is a really useful technique. So what I'm going to do is go back over here, and I wanted to find these variables somewhere where they will all be loaded, because all these CSS files should get compiled down to a single file. If we go over to Crutter here and we right click, let's go take a look at how these CSS files are being loaded. I'll expand the header, and we have the JS, and so all the styles are being dumped in here in line. Now when this when this project is shipped, I believe that these will all get compiled down to a single file. If they're not, I guess they're all embedded here. But we probably want this as a single file. But these are getting loaded in a particular order. As you can see, this one is being loaded first. So we probably want to put those definitions here. So what we'll do is go back over to here, and we'll go down to index.css, because I know this is getting called first, and we'll put this stuff up here. And looking at our ChatGPT example, we'll grab the root. What is the root element? I don't remember. It's just like it's the root element for the whole thing, and you're applying the variables here. That's just where you're supposed to put them. And so we could set different colors. So I could go here and say BG and say like background color, or we could just say like, alter or primary. Sometimes I do like primary. I'll do like background and foreground, right? So maybe my background, I want this to be my background. So grab that. And then for our foreground, it would be whatever this color is here, or what this is over here. What is that? Is that perfect black? No, it is, what is this? The join box? Yeah, it is black. So, I said earlier, you're not supposed to use black. Sometimes I do, but these are guidelines. They're not hard rules. So I'm just going to use black, even though I said you're not supposed to. But anyway, so those two are set now, and then we can reference them over here. So how do we reference them? It is, the var. So we'll go here, and I will type in var, and I'll do --bg. And then for this component here, which is on the right-hand side here, I already have inspector open, so I'll bring it over. We will go look here, and this is in the join section. So we'll go back over here, and we will look for join section CSS, and you can see the background's being applied there. So I can go here and type in var foreground, right? And then the idea is that you can set these everywhere, and that way you'll have less trouble when dealing with changes, because then you have to change them in one place, right? You just change these, and then basically you're creating your theme. So if we expanded all this out and set all this stuff up, we can theme our Crutter. So I'll give this a refresh here. And you can see the colors seems to be working correctly. We should set this one as well, so that we can then tweak it and see what happens there. I just right-clicked it and I'll just close this. We'll right-click, go to inspect, and it's already on the element where we clicked it. So I'll just move up here till I find this. That doesn't set a background, so we'll go up. That doesn't set a background, so we'll go to content. So content's the one that's setting it. It's an app CSS. We'll go over to app CSS. There it is. We'll grab, or we'll just write it in. So we'll say var bg semicolon. We will go back over to our app, refresh, make sure there are no problems. Now that didn't work correctly, so we have a slight issue. What happened? So we'll go and check our terminal, and we'll maybe go to Docker here, and we will right click into the backend. Up here, and we will view the logs. As that is going, we will go back over here and to our inspector and see if there's any CSS errors. I don't see any, so no problem so far. Oh, you know what? This is because this is the foreground. That's right. So there we go. Now let's say we want to change that foreground color, because we say we shouldn't use 100% black. So what I'll do is inspect here, right click, inspect. If we go to join, we can see that it's set here. I think it will change this globally, so we can kind of play around and see what it looks like. It's only changing it for the current one. Let's close that, refresh, inspect. Okay, we'll go to join here. Let's click through to the, we'll click through, and then maybe we can just change it here. There we go. So what we could do is, if we want to satisfy our not using 100% blacks, we could go here to the bottom left corner where it's gray and drag up a little bit, or we could do it from this corner if we want a bit of color. And I could drag it over to purple. Right, so we go here, see that. So now we're not using a perfect black, and we'll switch this over. 8114, so we'll grab that. And now we're satisfying that rule. Now, you probably would want to make it not as dark there, but that's just what we're doing. So I'll go ahead and paste this in here. I'm going to stick with my RGBs. Again, you know, if you prefer hex, you use hex. If you prefer RGB, you prefer RGB. But I like going here because sometimes I like tweaking the values manually. Or at least that's how I used to do it, because I didn't have these color pickers in place, because I usually use Vim. So I like to manually edit them, but it's up to you what you like to do. So we'll go ahead and refresh that. So you can see this could be a lot of work re-rigging it, but once it is done, it is definitely worth it. And then the idea is that if you want to create a theme, you just bring different colors and you can change that. So that's pretty cool. So some other things that are bothering me, like the contrast around these here is not very strong on this element. So I'll go inspect it, and that's a search field. So we'll go to search. So it's search.js. So what we'll do is go over here and go here on the left-hand side, and I will scroll up and find search CSS. We have a border and we have a background. I'll go back over to the index, and so we could say inputs. So it could be inputs or fields. So fields, field border, field background, I suppose. And so these would be the two values that we might want to set here. So here's our border. Paste. And then here's our background. Paste. And this does have like a focus, so we could say BG focus. Put that here. So now what we can do is replace these. Say var field BG focus. And you know, it does take time to figure out how you should name these things. So if you aren't sure with your names, don't worry, you'll have to go back and fix them when they do not work the way you want them to work. Border. And this should have been border focus. So we'll take that up there. This is supposed to be var, like that. And then this one is supposed to be var field bg. These have to have semicolons on the end of them. So that looks like it's set correctly. We'll go back over here, refresh. Looks okay to me. Now let's go around and play with this. So we'll go here, and we can click into the border field, and we will see that it is very, very light. So we can drag this up, expand that. Now, I don't really like it on the purple like this. So the question is, if we set this other places, what will the experience be somewhere else? So what I'll do is I just want to see if there's any other elements we might need to adjust. So I'll just go here and make a new tab. And I want to go to the sign-in page because this has elements, but these don't look the same way as this one, right? So these ones actually look pretty good, but they're on a dark background, whereas these ones are on a light background, and we are using very specific colors. Sometimes it's better to use like a neutral color, like a gray, and then have a transparency so that you can use them in two different places. I'm not sure what we're using here, so we'll go ahead and inspect that. And we'll go here and take a look. Sometimes if it's hard to find the border, you can go to compute it and it will tell you all the values, but it doesn't usually help to locate where the CSS is. So I can see that the border color is using RGB 85, 85, 85. I wonder if that's the case for the border. It is. So it's just a gray. So what I could have done instead is I could have went and used a white, and then we drag it down. I will switch that over to RGB so it's a bit easier to look. And so we could get the same effect like that. And then instead I could have grabbed this value, go over here, and then use it here on the border, and maybe we would get the same effect. And I don't trust that it did it that way, so I'll have to change it manually. This would just be 0.029. Put a semicolon on the end there. And so we'll see what result we get. So we go back here, and that looks pretty good there. It actually looks like this, what we want. And then we can keep it for here as well when it's off like that. So that's perfect. So what I'm going to do is go find this element here. And sometimes you can normalize things across multiple fields. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. But this is applied to the sign-in page manually here for these. So we'll go find this article sign-in. This is on sign-in page. So go sign-in page here. And I am looking for this here, great. And so instead of using this one, we'll do var -- field border. And then for the, where's the hover for this? Down here, it's this 149.055, which is actually our field background color, which is interesting. Oh, it's also this one. Oh yeah, so okay, great. So this is actually the same value, that's perfect. So I can take this one here. I thought it was gonna be something different, but it's not. So now we're just kind of making everything a little bit more consistent. So we'll put that one in there. We'll go up, make sure that we have our semicolon on the end and semicolon on the end of this one here. And so now I can go back to my search CSS. Oh, and those have already been updated. That's great. So now those two are consistent. If we go back and refresh here, looks the same, perfect. We'll go back here, looks better. Still a bit hard on that background. I'll go back over here and I just want to inspect it to make sure that actually is using it. Double check. Remember to disable the cache under your network because sometimes it caches these values. Now, since it's embedding it directly into the page here in the styles, I don't think it would cache it. It usually caches these external links, not these values per se. I don't think so. But if you can, go to the network tab and make sure disabled cache is on. It's always a good habit to have it disabled when you're working development, especially doing front-end development like this. But anyway, I'm going to go back here and inspect this. Okay. And we will scroll on down here. I'm just looking for if it's set, but it's still showing the old one. Okay. Did we not update it correctly? Did we not refresh this page? We'll just refresh that. Here I thought it was working. That's why you always got to double, triple check stuff. I'll go back over to our CSS here. Search page. Okay. Oh, I did it up on the sign up page. All right. Well, we will go to the sign-in page, I suppose. I know these are very similar, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue, but we'll go into the sign-in page. And I'm looking for it here. So here it is. Same color as before, so this is going to work perfectly for us. We'll do var field border. And you know, we could have called this border color as opposed to border, but I'm just calling it border because often I don't like putting solid one and having those adjustable. But we could have took all of this value and put it here. We could have done like solid 1 pixel, but that's not how I'm doing it. So we have that. The background color, I mean, this shows it as that. We didn't change it for the other one. We left them as that darker color. And I kind of prefer it on those ones. So it could be that, well, I mean, we could try it out for this one. We should try it out for the main page because maybe actually it'll look good on there. So I'll go here, and instead of this, I'm going to put this in. Didn't take what I wanted, so we'll go back over here. And I'm going to just copy that, right-click, copy. We'll go back over to this tab here. And we will paste this in. And put a hash on the front there. So, I mean, it's more consistent. It depends on if you like it. I mean, I kind of feel like it pops quite a bit, and I'm not sure if I like that. We never coded it into autocomplete, so it's not showing any results, so I wasn't sure what that would look like. For consistency's sake, to make my lives easier, I think I might just do it. So what I'll do is I'll take this one. What color is this? 31, 31, 31, okay. RGB, 31, 31, 31. And we'll go here and we will say var field BG. There is a hover over here. And we'll do this. Now, you'll notice that I'm using plain CSS. Like, if you see up here, we have these two fields. And if we were using Sass, what we could do is instead of having to type this twice, I could have done something like this. And I could have brought it here, and then we would end up with less code. But I'm using CSS, and the reason why I'm using CSS is that when you can in a project use the simplest thing, then it's just another thing you don't have to maintain. It's the same reason why you'll find out we're using CloudFormation in this course as opposed to Terraform or CDK. It's that if you are using something that might take a little bit more time, but is a lot simpler, more primitive, and it's just better for maintenance long term. Because when you come back to this, let's say you don't touch these CSS files for like a year. CSS will always work the same way as you did it before, generally. Whereas if you use Sass, what I found is like, there used to be Sass 1.0, then there was Sass 2.0, so the syntax changed, and so you had all these different options, and then the library I was using for Sass for years, they said they didn't support it anymore, so you're forced to change the syntax in all your files. So there's things like that where it's just, you don't want to have to deal with constant updates and changes, and so that's why I made the decision to do this. If this became unmanageable, and it hasn't been, it's been pretty easy and straightforward, then you consider to use Sass. It could also be dependent on how you organize your files, because we're breaking them up as individual files here. It really reduces the scope of what you have to do. So you just have to decide what it is that you want to do. And I always consider it more important to think about long-term maintenance than your short-term productivity, or at least gauge like what it is you're getting. Because some people just go like, oh, it's going to save me so much time. In reality, it really doesn't. And so that's something I want you to consider. So we'll go back over here and I'll refresh, and there seems to be something broken. So we broke something. Let's take a look here. We'll scroll up. Oh, we forgot a hyphen here, so no big deal. That was in the sign-in page. So I'm just going to type in /field. It's missing somewhere. It is in sign-in page, line 50. Oh, you know what? It's not supposed to have var in front of here. And we need a semicolon on the end. If we don't have that, then these won't render at all. We'll give that a refresh. Okay, so I think that is a minor improvement for sure for readability. There's always more work to do. Again, I could make a whole bootcamp on this. Don't want to do that right now, unless there is a great interest and there's some way to get paid to do it. But yeah, hopefully you'll find that a major improvement, at least for visibility, as we were working through this project. And yeah, so we'll leave it at that. I'm going to commit this. We'll say improved UI changes. And also, I guess the other part of this would be the fact that we set up theme CSS variables. Go there, we'll commit it, we'll sync it. There you go. Ciao.